Hey guys, it's Ashley Simone here. I hope you guys had an amazing weekend and ready to start tomorrow off, right? Tomorrow is Monday. It's Monday already. But I am ready. I'm ready for the week. I'm ready to see the things that God has in store for me this week. And all of you, honestly. Tonight I'm going to be talking about Jeremiah. Y'all, sometimes I have dreams to these and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I don't honestly always understand all my dreams, so I kind of um wait until I get full understanding about the dream before I add the dream in. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I don't have a dream with this, but this is where God has led me to talk about with you guys. So I'm going to just talk to y'all about the notes that I took on Jeremiah and everything that I learned so far. And y'all, Jeremiah has always been the book that I would read before I even started fully reading my whole Bible. Jeremiah was the book that I would stay stuck on. I would never finish it, but I was there because my son, my firstborn, his name is Jeremiah. And also, my favorite scripture in the Bible, for I know the plans I have for you to prosper you and not hurt you, Jeremiah 29:11. That is my favorite scripture. It has always been my favorite scripture, and I don't know. I'm just happy to be at this book right now. It's just so crazy. There's so much that I want to say, but I know that it's a time and place for everything, and God isn't leading me to go into details about it all right now, because it's hard to explain some things that God has put you through. It's just not time right now. But I'm gonna go ahead and jump right into this. So Jeremiah, he was a prophet. He he was called to be a prophet in the 13th year of the reign of King Josiah, and he continued being a prophet after the capture of I can't talk tonight as usual. Jerusalem by the Babylonians. See y'all. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Jeremiah was a little bit afraid to go talk to the people because of his speech problem, or he didn't think he could talk to these people. And y'all, look at me. It's hard for me to pronounce a whole bunch of words, but I try my best. And if you don't understand, you gotta understand what I'm saying. Put it together. Put two and two together. Oh, that's what she said. But it's so funny because that's the type of people that he will call. And as we grow in getting stronger and educating ourselves more and more, it'll come more naturally, and it won't seem as hard as it looks. But he was called to warn Israel about the severe consequences of breaking the covenant with God due to their idolatry and injustice, and he even predicted that the empire of Babylon will come as God's servant to bring this judgment on Israel by destroying Jerusalem, taking the people into exile. And sadly, all Jeremiah's word really came reality to them. All of that stuff really happened. And even Jeremiah, he lived to see everything come to pass. He saw the destruction of Jerusalem and witnessed the exile personally. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 36, it tells us, after 20 years of Jeremiah preaching in Jerusalem, God called him to collect all of his sermons and poems and essays and committed them to writing. A scribe by the name of a scribe is like a person who is like a writer or someone like that who put things together. So his name was Baruch. He wrote down all of this material into a scroll. He also gathered lots of stories about Jeremiah and linked all the pieces together. And so this is why the book reads like a collection of collection to present this prophet as a messenger of God's justice and grace. So when you read the book of Jeremiah, it's so much stuff together. It got a whole bunch of poems, just a lot of different things that he wrote, and even other people wrote about him together. And it's a good book. The book begins with God calling Jeremiah to be a prophet. He gives a dual location. He's given a dual location. So he had two things that God placed in him to do. He will be a prophet to Israel, but also to the nation. So he wasn't just prophesying to the people closest to him. God was sending him prophesying to nations. And his words will be both uproot and tear down, but also plant and build up. In other words, he's going to accuse Israel and warn them of God's coming judgment. But he also has a message of hope for the future of Israel at the same time. Israel has broken the covenant with God and violated all the terms of the agreement they made that are written in the Torah. They worship other gods, building idols all over the land. Jeremiah also accused Israel leaders and priests and kings and other prophets. They all have become corrupt and abandoned the Torah and its covenant. The most vulnerable people in the Israelites communities, as in widows and orphans and immigrants, were all taken advantage of in clear violation of the law of the Torah. And the leaders of Israel, they didn't even care that these people would get taken advantage of. In chapter 7, which is called Jeremiah's temple sermon, the Israelites are coming to worship their God in the temple as if everything was okay and just fine. But outside of the temple, they were worshiping other gods. Some were even doing child sacrifice. So these people, this is really wicked, because it's like these people, they're coming into the temple of God and worshiping him, but behind closed doors, behind God's back, they're worshiping everything else they want to worship. So I guess they didn't think that God could see them. I'm not even sure, but it just don't even make sense, because God sees all. He sits high and he looks low. But sometimes sin will have you doing some things. Sin will have you doing some things. So Jeremiah makes his very unpopular announcement. It was very unpopular to these people. They didn't care what he had to say. And the announcement was, the God of Israel is coming in judgment. He is going to destroy his own people and punish Israel by sending an enemy from the north. And I remember studying that scripture about the boiling pot running over. He asked Jeremiah what he saw. At first, Jeremiah told God all he saw was an almond tree and I think a branch. And then God was like, yeah, but I need you to look again. And that's when Jeremiah said, I see the pot running over from the north. And something like that. I might be missing some points, but my point about that verse is sometimes God shows you something, but he wants you to look at it again. Sometimes you gotta look at it twice to really understand what he's trying to show you or trying to tell you. And I went through that today, actually. I had a dream, and I had to really look at it twice. Like, I knew it was something more that he was trying to tell me because I could feel it. It was like he showed me this stuff about someone else, but it was really talking about my own life. And I feel how personal this dream was. And when I took a nap and I woke back up and I thought about the dream, I read the dream, and I took some notes on it, and I was like, Lord, you was telling me about my own life the whole time. So sometimes we gotta look at it twice. We see it this way, but what is he really trying to tell us? And that was something Jeremiah went through in the beginning. Well, it wasn't really a whole thing, but I remember that scripture, and I just thought I would share that with y'all. And so in chapter 25 of the book of Jeremiah, after everything Jeremiah has told them, Israel still hasn't turned back to their God. So after everything that Jeremiah said, he warned them over and over, and still didn't want to turn from their evil ways. And like the saying say, warning comes before destruction. And in the first year of Babylon's new king Nebuchadnezzar, God tells Jeremiah to announce that the Babylonians' armies are headed for Israel and all its neighbors to conquer them and take them into exile for 70 years. That's a long time. That's a long time. And in chapter 26 through 45, Jeremiah begged Israel to turn back. He warned them right up until the last minute. These people still wouldn't listen. He begged them, and they wouldn't listen to him. But the leaders kept rejecting him. And I felt kind of sad for Jeremiah, because it's hard when you keep trying to tell people what God is saying and they don't even believe you, or they just look at you like you're crazy. Like, it's hard. I know some people call a lot of followers of Jesus Christ crazy. They're just crazy people. But it's not that they're crazy. It's crazy to other people because they don't know like us believers know. And it kind of hurts because you want them to believe like you believe, but they got to want it on their own. But that doesn't mean you stop preaching and you stop saying what God has told you to say, because you never know. You might catch somebody by one word or one sentence. Just something may catch their attention, and you might just be there at that right time to catch their attention. God just works like that. Like, you just never know. That's why he wants you to continue to always be obedient and do what he has called you to do, no matter what it may look like or who may believe you. Just keep going. Don't never stop, because it's all going to come to pass one day. If he said something, he's going to do it. Jeremiah was even kidnapped and took to Egypt. They kidnapped him and took him to Egypt. But Jeremiah still had hope for these same people who did this stuff to him. As Moses said in Deuteronomy, I hope I said that right. Chapter 30, God will not abandon his people. Rather, God will renew his covenant with them and transform their heart. Jeremiah develops the same promise, and he says that God is one day inscribed the law, and inscribed the law of the Torah, not on tablets, but on the hearts of his own people. So let me say that in a way that y'all understand it. So God wasn't going to not fulfill his promise to Israel, no matter how much they went through and how many bad things they did. God was going to renew their heart in the inside, and that law that he had written in the Torah on tablets, he was going to put those same words in their hearts. He was going to write it in their hearts. He was going to heal the rebellion so that they can truly one day love and follow him fully. One day the Israelites will return back to the land, and that's when the Messiah, Jesus Christ, will come. God was not going to let Israelites' sin get the final word. Why? Because God gets the final word. God gets the final word. No matter what we went through, no matter what we came up against, no matter what was brought up against us, God has the final say. God owns faithfulness. God's own faithfulness brings about the fulfillment of his promises no matter what. God will do what he said he would do no matter what. God will do what he said he would do. If God gave you a promise, he's going to do what he said he would do. Ain't no ifs, ands, about that one. He is who he said he is. He's not a man that he should lie to you. He will give you what he said he was going to give you. And then in chapter 46 through 51, these are poems towards the end of the book. The poems in chapter 46 to 51 are about how God is going to use Babylon to judge the nations around Israel. So we know that Babylon is a bad city or bad country or whatever it is. And the thing is, God used them, the bad people, to fix his people. He would use your enemies to fix you, to do what it is that he wants you to do, to open your eyes to some things. He will use his own enemies to fix you, to open your eyes. And then in chapter 50 through 51, there are poems about God's coming judgment on Babylon itself. And that tells you right there that God wasn't rewarding. God wouldn't just let the Babylonians get away with the bad things they were doing just because he used them to fix his people. He didn't just overlook the bad things that they were doing. But the thing is about God, you will never be able to figure him out. He does things like this, and it's just mind-blowing. Although God used this nation to execute justice, God doesn't endure their violence and adultery. And basically, these people were even enemy to God. Not saying that they could do anything to him, but they were against God, and God used them as his own footstool. And Jeremiah says to this nation too, they will come under the standard of God's justice. And Jeremiah calls out their pride and their justice as well. So God was saying there, just like I punished Israel for their wrongdoings, I'm going to punish you for your wrongdoings too. Just because I use you to correct them, that don't mean I'm letting you go. You going to get away with the things you have done wrong. And at the end of the book in chapter 52, the book ends with, after the Babylonians captured the Israelites, the king of Israel was released. He was an heir from the line of David, and the king of Babylon shows him favor and invites him to eat at the royal table with them for the rest of his life. So, with that being said, that right there shows you that there was still hope. Like Jeremiah said earlier in the earlier chapter, there was still hope for the Israelites, for the king of Babylon to call the king of Israel out to eat at the royal table for the rest of his life. That's hope. That's some type of hope. That king, those are his people that are locked up. But the king of Babylon allowed him to come eat at their table. That's some type of hope right there. Something could happen. Something can change. If that could happen, anything could happen. And God said what he was going to do through Jeremiah. And there's still hope. There's still hope because God will get the last word in this. And Jeremiah isn't the only person he spoke these promises to. Like I said earlier, he spoke it through Moses too, way back in the book of Genesis. Jeremiah 29:11. He knows the plans. He knows the plans. They're not to hurt us. They may hurt for a little while, but in the end, they're just strengthening us and making us better, to prosper us, to grow us, to give us a hope for our future. So y'all, I pray that y'all got something good out of this little story that I had to tell y'all. I'm so thankful for everybody who's been watching my video. I pray that y'all continue to watch them as time go on. It's not even about the views or how many people see them, but as long as just one or two people catches what God needs me to tell them, I'm thankful and I'm overjoyed for that, because I have done what he has told me to do. And that's all I want to do. I want to do what he tells me to do. Live my life how he wants me to live it. So y'all, I hope that y'all have a good evening, a good night, this Sunday night, and I'll be back tomorrow to talk about something or somebody in this good old Bible that he has given us to follow. So I love y'all, and I hope y'all have a good night. Bye.